If you enjoy watching Common Ground online, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at lptv.org. Lakeland Public Television presents Common Ground, brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Welcome to Common Ground. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. In this episode, retired biology teacher Rob Knudson, my dad, takes us into the woods to teach us how to identify trees by their leaves.
I'm Rob Knudson. I was an ecology teacher for 25 years, and I always started out the fall with a forest management practices unit. And the very first thing we always did was we learned the names of the trees based on the shape of their leaves, and that's what we'd like to do in this program. We're not going to do the shrubs, we're not going to do the 10-foot tall stuff, we're not going to do the brush, but when you go out in the woods and look up at full-size trees in north central Minnesota, these are the trees that you're going to see. It's always more enjoyable to take a walk in the woods when you can understand what it is that you're looking at. Okay, this is a really common tree around here. You might notice that you probably recognize the shape from the Canadian flag, and you probably recognize it as a maple tree. It's not the only maple tree we have here, but this particular one has obviously the three main parts of the leaf and a nice smooth edge between the points. This is sugar maple. Okay, and this is one of the two most common maple trees that we have in northern Minnesota. The three major points, smaller points on it. The thing that distinguishes this particular maple, which is sugar maple, some people refer to it as hard maple, is that between the points, it's nice and smooth. The other kind of maple that we have, you'll see, has smaller teeth between the main teeth. This is sugar maple. And you can also identify older sugar maples by their trunk. Okay, and this is the trunk of a typical older sugar maple tree. You'll be able to recognize these. And again, the thing to do is once you recognize the leaf, then look at the trunk and look at the shape of the tree and try to learn from that. Older sugar maple trees very oftentimes turn black. They almost look like they've been on fire. And you can see on this one that the trunk is black compared to most trees. Okay, and this is American basswood, and it's obviously very large leaves, but the thing you want to watch for with American basswood from other leaves is it's bigger on one side than it is on the other side. You can see that's true of all the leaves, and it doesn't have a pointed tip. Larger on one side, smaller on the other side. American basswood. Okay, there are several species of ash in northern Minnesota. This is the most common one and the only one we're going to do in this program. This is green ash. And what I'd like you to notice about this is the reality is this is one leaf. And these are called leaflets. And in the ash species, all of the ash species, there's black ash, green ash, white ash, and in town you'll find mountain ash, the ones with the orange berries. You'll see that they always have leaflets that come out directly across from each other in a pattern like that. This is green ash. Okay, this tree right here is one of the more obscure trees in the woods, but it's a good one to know. If you look at the leaves of this tree, they're fairly concentric. They might be a little bit bigger on one side than the other, but the thing to note about this is that they're a nice, neat sawtooth all the way around from the bottom to the tip on both sides. Just a single sawtooth. This is hornbeam. A lot of times the common name, the local name for this is ironwood, but it's actually hornbeam. And this is about as big as a typical hornbeam tree would be. It's usually really twisted and kind of gnarly looking, but this is hornbeam. Here's a tree that's actually quite identifiable by its leaf. It's a real typical looking leaf, but if you look real close, it has saw teeth that are fairly big, and then in between those saw teeth, there are very, very tiny saw teeth. But the reality is, there's no use learning this leaf because it's from a tree that's more obviously recognized by its bark. This is paper birch. Okay, this tree is one of the two most common type of aspens, what most people call popples. This particular one, if you look at it, has teeth along the edge and a fairly good sized leaf. This is appropriately named big-toothed aspen. And the leaves are bigger than this, which is trembling aspen, which has smaller, smoothed edge round leaves. And here's a real good look at some trembling aspen. And we've got literally a 4-mile-an-hour breeze going right now, and you can see that even a slight breeze causes those rounded leaves to wiggle back and forth, to tremble, if you will. Probably has an adaptive value of keeping off insects and insect larvae, like caterpillars. Again, note the nice, round, smooth-edged leaves on trembling aspen. Big-tooth aspen and trembling aspen, the two most common types of poplar in northern Minnesota. Now this tree is red maple. You may remember that when we looked at sugar maple had the same shape of a leaf, but sugar maple had points that were nice and smooth between the points. The difference between red maple and sugar maple has the points, just like sugar maple did, but in between the points it has smaller points, like a little sawtooth. This is red maple, also known as soft maple. Okay, this tree that's behind me right now is one of our most common species of oaks around here. I would like you to notice on this one, this leaf has real pointed tips. These trees are actually members of the red oak group. Note this one. This is a common northern red oak, and this is even more common around here, and it's called a pin oak. You might notice that the northern red oak and the pin oak both have real pointed tips, but the pin oak obviously has very, very deep notches, whereas the northern red oak has shallow notches. This is pin oak, and this is northern red oak. Okay, here's another example of an oak tree, but you might notice that this one's totally different than the last oaks we looked at. This oak, instead of having pointed tip leaves, has a rounded tip leaves. Now, a lot of people call these white oaks, but in reality, these are bur oak. White oaks traditionally live a few hundred miles south of here. We have a few around. You're likely to find them planted in people's yards and on old farmsteads and this, but the real common oak that we have around here with rounded tips is bur oak. And you can tell bur oak from white oak. Bur oak has notches at the bottom, and then the outer part of the leaf, the notches are not nearly as deep and they're rounded on the edge. This is bur oak. If this were a white oak, these deep notches would go all the way to the end of the leaf. There'd be like 3 more notches in here. This is bur oak. These trees in the background right here are American basswood, and we identified that by this huge leaf with an asymmetric shape where it's bigger on one side than the other. This was basswood. We have another real common tree around here that's asymmetric. You can see that right here. This is American elm. And American elm, one side is bigger than the other. It isn't nearly as big as the basswood, and it has real nice looking teeth along the edge, and then on the teeth there are smaller teeth. This is American elm. Now in town you may see leaves that look like these, only they're much smaller. Those are probably Chinese elm, and somebody probably planted them. But these trees in the woods usually have leaves about this big, maybe even bigger, and they're American elm. Bigger on one side than the other, not nearly as big as basswood. with nice defined teeth with teeth on the teeth. Be aware that in some of the species of trees that we're going to be looking at, there's a lot of natural genetic variation. The leaves won't all look exactly like the ones we're looking at. Just like a deer, one deer is not exactly the same color as another deer or doesn't have exactly the same shape of antler. Not every leaf will be shaped exactly like the ones we're looking at, but they're going to be close. We're going to start with the maples. The maples are a good one to start with because they have a shape that's a good foundation for comparison of the other types of trees. And if you go out into the woods, you're going to find two kinds. You're going to find sugar maple and you're going to find red maple. You might notice that they have the same basic shape, maple leaf. It'd be a good one to memorize what it looks like. But you'll notice that the sugar maple has a nice smooth edge to it, whereas the red maple has a serrated edge to it. Same shaped leaf, same basic kind of tree, but smooth edge and serrated edge. Now in town, there are two other maples. This one here is one of the most common yard trees that we have in northern Minnesota. This is silver maple. You might notice it's got the same maple leaf shape. It doesn't have the serrated edges like red maple. It has more of a smooth edge, but you might notice that these notches are much deeper than in the sugar maple. Well, this is silver maple, sugar maple, red maple. And this one right here doesn't look like a maple, but in fact it is. It's in the same genus. Okay, this is box elder, another one that you're going to find real common in town, but very seldom out in the woods. This is actually one leaf we're looking at. It's called a compound leaf. This is the main part of the leaf, and these are leaflets. This is box elder. And box elder can be recognized because it has basically a three-pointed tip to it usually, and then a couple of other subsidiary leaflets. Box elder, silver maple, common in town, not in the woods. Real common in the woods around here, sugar maple, maple-shaped leaf, smooth edge, red maple, same shape, serrated edge. These are the two common trees in the woods. In town, silver maple, looks kind of like sugar maple, fairly smooth. It has teeth, but fairly smooth edge, but very, very deep notches. And box elder, which is one leaf, these are leaflets. Box elder has a triple pointed leaf with some smaller leaves up the shaft. Let's take a look at the oaks. When you're walking through the woods in northern Minnesota, you're highly likely to find these three. This one and this one are very common. This one's pretty common. These first two, you might notice, have pointed tips, where these here have rounded tips. Now, very, very common in northern Minnesota are these two right here. This one with the real pointed tips with very, very deep notches is pin oak. Right next to it, with pointed tips, but shallower notches, this is red oak. Northern red oak, pin oak. Real common, both trees around here. This one, most people in northern Minnesota refer to this as white oak, but in reality it's bur oak. And bur oak has, instead of pointed tips, it has rounded tips to the leaves, and it has notches at the base of the leaf, but the terminal portion of the leaf is usually pretty much one big palmated piece. Okay, this is bur oak. We do have some white oak around, and the way you'll recognize a white oak tree is if all of the leaves on the tree have deep notches with rounded tips, and the notches go all the way out the end. This is not a very good example of white oak. In fact, in reality, this is probably bur oak, but it shows that what you need to look for. White oak has notches that go all the way in, all the way up to the tip, even more so than this one, with rounded tips. White oak, rare around here, real common farther south. Very common around here, bur oak, commonly called white oak. Rounded portion, palmated end with the notches at the base of the leaf. And then the two pointed leaf ones, northern red oak and pin oak. Okay, these are the aspens. Most people call them popples. Technically, they're aspens. There are actually two that are real common in the woods that most people really don't realize there's a difference. The trunks look exactly the same, or pretty much exactly the same. And to look at the trunks, you probably wouldn't be able to tell difference. But if you look at the leaves, they are in fact different. These have a bigger leaf than these. These have teeth around the edge, and these have Yeah, small teeth, but not like this one. Okay, this right here, this is trembling aspen, sometimes called quaking aspen, especially out west they refer to these as quakies or quaking aspen. These are the ones that have a rounded leaf, and when the wind blows they shake. Why they're called trembling aspen. This, for obvious reasons, is called big-toothed aspen. Big-toothed aspen and trembling aspen are very common. These two right here are trees that you'll find in town once in a while out in the woods. Once in a while you'll find one of these. These are more common a little bit west of here, out in more of where it starts turning into prairie country, but they are in town. This is a cottonwood, but it's also a type of aspen, one of the fastest growing trees there is. And cottonwood, you can see, has smaller teeth and a pointier tip than either of the aspens, smaller teeth than the big-toothed aspen. This one, we really don't even need to have a leaf because the tree is more recognizable from its trunk. This is Lombardy poplar, and you really don't need to learn the leaf on this one because you'll recognize this one from the shape of the tree. The tree is totally straight up and down with the side branches clinging to the side of the tree. Those real tall, straight ones that you see in people's yards. The cottonwood and Lombardy look similar, except for obviously the leaf is wider than it is long. Cottonwood, more toward out in the prairie. Lombardy poplar, more of a yard tree. I've never seen one in the woods. Cottonwood, Lombardy poplar. Not out in the woods, you won't find them almost never. These are the two from the woods. Big-toothed aspen with big teeth and trembling aspen are the ones that you'll find very commonly around here. These two are examples of ash trees. We actually have several types of ash around here, but I think for the purpose of what we're doing here, let's just learn this as ash. But they all have one thing in common. They all have a large leaf divided into leaflets, a compound leaf again, like we've already seen. On ash trees, all the time, the leaflets are directly across from each other. And that's how you'd recognize an ash. This particular one is green ash. And this is very, very common in the woods. We have green ash like this. We also have black ash and white ash, which are a little bit narrower leaves than these, but they still have leaves that are directly across from one another. This one right here, you'll see mostly in town, and this is mountain ash. This is the tree that grows those beautiful orange berries that the cedar waxwings love so well in the fall. And once in a while, I have actually seen these out in the woods, but usually it's because the birds eat the berries and carry the berries and deposit them in the woods and they grow. But you will notice that mountain ash, just like the green ash, has a leaf that's divided into leaflets, and the leaflets are directly across from one another. This one could be confused with a leaf like this, which looks kind of similar, but I'd like you to notice that these leaves come out alternately. One comes out on this side, then one on this side, then one on that side. Instead of being straight across from one another like they were on the ash, they're out to the side. And this is one of several different kinds of willows that we have around here. And all of the willows that we have, and I'm not going to get into the willows, all of the willows will have kind of long, narrow leaves that are alternating the way they come off of the stem. Also, the willows, this is one leaf, where this is one leaf of an ash. As the ash trees all have them directly across from one another, the willows all have them alternating. We have green ash, white ash, and black ash in northern Minnesota. But for this program, let's just worry about them being called ash. This is green ash. Okay, here are some trees that are a little bit harder to define than some of the ones we've looked at, but they're all very, very common here. But there are some things about them that make them easy to figure out. Okay, this one right here and this one right here, you might notice that they're asymmetrical. They are bigger on one side than they are on the other side. Okay, these two are pretty uniform from side to side. This one has very defined big saw teeth with saw teeth on the saw teeth, whereas this one has just a simple sawtooth pattern. This one is rounder than this one. This one if you compare it to this one, are kind of the same, but again, this one is symmetric, this one is not. Okay, what these are, and I'll get back to this is basswood, one of the biggest leaves you'll find in the woods. It's the size leaf you'll find on a full-size tree in the woods for sure. This is American elm, another real common tree in the woods. Those are the two trees that have the not equal on either side shape. This leaf right here looks kind of like elm, and it's kind of, again, a generic looking leaf. It has smaller teeth than elm, but the main thing is it's not bigger on one side than the other side. Common name for this one around here is ironwood, but the fact is it's actually hornbeam. This is one that we talked about earlier that you can recognize by that twisted, gnarly trunk, and they don't get very, very big. You'll never find a 50-foot tall hornbeam tree. They're more like 25 feet tall. And this leaf is quite definable if we wanted to get into it, but this is the one that was so obviously recognizable by the bark that we don't need to learn the leaf. This is paper birch, and it's very easily recognized from the bark rather than the leaves. The bark was that tree that it was peeling off and it looked like paper. White birch or paper birch, real common. Identify paper birch from the bark. Hornbeam and birch are probably more recognizable from the shape of the trunk and the bark than they are from the shape of the leaf. But hornbeam has little tiny teeth compared to elm. Elm is bigger on one side than the other, and hornbeam is not. Basswood is a big rounded leaf with kind of a single sawtooth. Basswood, American elm, hornbeam, and don't worry about the leaf, it's birch. Okay, let's take a little quiz on this and see how you do. Okay, here's that real definable shape we talked about, smooth along the edges as opposed to this one. Notches not as deep as this one. This one, and this one all have pretty much the same shape. Smooth edges, jagged edges, deep notches found in town. Same family, compound leaf, 3 tips found in town. Sugar maple, hard maple. Red maple, real common in the woods. Okay, silver maple, not very common in the woods, but really common in town. Box elder, actually a maple, one of the most common shade trees in the city. Common in the woods, both of them. Pointed tips, shallow notches, deep notches. This one, rounded edges, notches at the base of the leaf, but not at the end of the leaf. Northern red oak. Pin oak. Bur oak. These two, the two most common ones found around here, one of them has a much rougher edge. This one is the small round leaf that blows in the wind. This is the one that normally happens a little farther to the west in the prairie, great big tree. Nice defined teeth along the edges. This is the one that has the real straight trunk with the branches that come straight up the side. Trembling aspen. Big-tooth aspen. Eastern cottonwood. Lombardy poplar found in town. Here's the two that have one side bigger than the other side. This is the big rounded leaf one, little pointier leaf with double saw teeth along the edge. This was the one that had the twisted trunk with smaller teeth, and it's the same on both sides as opposed to that one. This one is the one you recognize from the white bark. Here's the one where the leaflets come out directly opposite each other. And here's a smaller version of the same kind of leaf, the ones that have berries that you find in your yard. American elm. Basswood. Hornbeam, again commonly called ironwood. White birch or paper birch. Don't worry about the leaf, remember the trunk. Green ash. Mountain ash, usually found in town. It's always more enjoyable to walk through the woods when you can recognize what you're looking at. I hope what we've done today will make your woodland walk a little bit more enjoyable.
Thanks for watching. Join us again on Common Ground. If you have an idea for a Common Ground piece that pertains to North Central Minnesota, email us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3014. To view any episode of Common Ground online, visit us at lptv.org. To order episodes or segments of Common Ground, call 218-333-3020. Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people November 4th, 2008. If you enjoyed this episode of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.